When you have a lot of energy that's built up, that's dedicated for one task,
Hmm.
and then you sit down to do it, and all of a sudden that urgency gets transferred or attributed to something else, we call
Hmm.
that a misattribution of arousal.
Hmm.
Um, when I teach students about that concept, the classic example I use is one of Sex and the City. Did you ever watch that show, David?
I did actually.
You did. So there's this funny moment where, like, Charlotte is crossing the street and she falls.
Okay.
And then somebody's in a cab and they slam on the brakes. And out comes Trey, right? So she looks at him and immediately she's like, that's the man for me. Now, one,
Okay.
she's a hopeless romantic, so of course she thinks that.
Okay.
But we can apply this theory to her as well, right? There's an arousal
Yeah.
around the danger situation, and
Yeah.
it gets misattributed as love,
Yeah.
right? And this study around misattribution of arousal comes from a social psychology study that was done on a suspension bridge, where people rated or were more likely to rate somebody else as being romantically interested in them if they met on the bridge. And so what it told us was that there's already a high baseline arousal based
Yeah.
on the risk and the height. And then it gets misattributed as something else.
Hmm.
So, how is this relevant to you? Well, this might end up being something we try to combat later in our alternative thought. So, we might say, like, a tidy apartment is good for a thinking space, but not necessary for today. And so, people ask, well, what do I do about that? Do I just not do it? Well, we need to reduce the level of arousal. The arousal is really high because you've probably slated yourself to do too much in that evening,
Hmm.
right? So the arousal comes down if we say, I only need to do a specific thing or two today.
Hmm.
And then you're less likely to have to misattribute it or shift the urgency onto something else.